What's up, spacers? This is your specialist, the Space Technician. With all the talk of the lunar lander and its end, we are diving deep into the recent Odysseus lunar lander mission by Intuitive Machines. Now, despite not nailing the landing as planned, this audacious moonshot was pioneering in many ways. But was it ultimately a success? Let's recap and analyze. Before we get into it, don't forget to smash that like button if you enjoy in-depth space tech content. Also, make sure you're subscribed and have rung the bell to join the notification squad. Your support really powers these projects, covering the latest rocket science and space news. Now, let's count down to some moon landing drama. Remember, strapping in is optional, but recommended. First, what exactly was this ambitious moon mission looking to accomplish? Well, Odysseus and Intuitive Machines had some serious lunar goals on their checklist. We're talking 3 massive ticks here, people. First up, return American-built tech to the lunar surface for the first time since the last Apollo boots left the moon, over 50 years ago. I mean, talk about breaking a cold streak, am I right? Secondly, showcase the awesome landing capabilities of new private space companies. Prove that corporate ingenuity and innovation can tackle mega challenges like precise robotic moon landings. Big check. And finally, deliver a batch of crucial NASA science instruments to scout ahead for future Artemis astronaut missions planned for the lunar South Pole region. We're talking scouting for ice water, demonstrating fancy navigation doodads, studying radiation levels, the whole shebang. Essentially, acting like a robotic John the Baptist, preparing the way for future moonwalkers. So in summary, return US hardware to the moon, stick the first private soft landing, and pave the way for future science and astronauts. No big deal, just 3 pioneering moonshot goals. Let's see if this bold new lunar logistics service checked all the boxes in the end. Blasting off on February 15th atop a flight-proven SpaceX Falcon 9, our intrepid lunar odyssey officially kicked off. Now, once safely delivered into space, the robotic lander, nicknamed Odysseus, fired up its engines to begin the nearly week-long journey to our nearest celestial neighbor. Over 250,000 miles, or 400,000 kilometers of deep space voyage ahead, with little margin for error. So, the early phases of cruise saw the team busy checking mission-critical events off their list. Course corrections on track? Check. Main engine performance nominal? Check. Communications and power systems green across the board? Check. And double check. With each milestone, confidence grew that Odysseus really had what it takes to stick this ambitious moon landing. Of course, complacency has doomed many a quest for the gods, so no resting on laurels yet. But smooth sailing out the gate kept hopes high for a successful lunar touchdown. At this stage of cruise, it was so far so good. Would things continue running this smoothly on the approach to the moon though? Only one way to find out. Buckle up and enjoy the ride. But Houston, we have a problem. Upon arriving in lunar orbit, Odysseus immediately encountered serious comm glitches and navigation uncertainties. Not exactly a confidence booster before attempting a super precise moon landing. With garbled data streams and questions surrounding the spacecraft's exact orbit, the team had no choice but to call a bold audible, delaying the timeline by a full day to upload critical guidance software patches. If they proceeded on the faulty code, Odysseus could easily end up miles off course or smash into lunar mountaintops. This 11th hour scramble was a heart-stopping twist in the journey, forcing engineers to improvise a software upgrade merely hours before the scheduled descent burn. And it marked Act 1 of a white-knuckle lunar landing drama, foreshadowing the many challenges yet to come. Would controllers wrestle the navigation gremlins in time to salvage the timeline? Could engineers invent capable code on the fly for this unprecedented private moonshot? The risks were sky high, but the team kept their cool under existential threat. Much still hung in the balance. And when you thought the stakes couldn't get higher, disaster strikes. Mere hours before the lunar landing burn, a routine pre-descent sensor check conveyed life-shattering news. The spacecraft's laser altimeters were completely dead in the water. These crucial systems for precisely measuring altitude and descent speed had somehow been accidentally switched off pre-launch and never reactivated. An absolute back-breaking failure at the worst possible time. How did they forget to turn them on? I wonder. Without working altimeters providing that key terrain and velocity data, a safe soft landing was nearly impossible by the computer's calculations. Essentially, Odysseus would be flying blind, unable to gauge its distance from the surface for triggering essential braking maneuvers. We're talking flying full speed into the side of a lunar mountain. Blind levels of danger. This mission-ending gut punch forced controllers to seriously question if the attempt was still viable. Could some kind of altimeter alternative be invented in a few hours remaining? The team now faced a now-or-never judgment call. Enact another bold audible or wave goodbye to any hopes of touching down in one piece. The final act of this live-or-die lunar drama was upon them, with all eyes on whether the ingenious last-ditch efforts could somehow snatch triumph from the jaws of almost certain failure. Facing a hopeless situation, lesser teams may have crumbled in despair, but not this group. With mere hours left before the committed deorbit burn, controllers shook off shell shock and demonstrated grace under fire, swiftly brainstorming an ingenious workaround solution. They knew an experimental navigation sensor called Doppler LiDAR was already on board, intended mainly for backup measurements. So, why not hack together a software patch allowing it to replace the defunct primary laser altimeters? It was a long shot, but with no alternatives, even a jury-rigged sensor mashup was better than certain catastrophe. Engineers burned the midnight oil, rapidly inventing emergency code, enabling the LiDAR to pipe data directly into the lander's navigation systems. This daring modification, invented practically on the fly, just might provide enough terrain mapping to attempt a blind touchdown. It was an insane Hail Mary, a bonkers 11th hour act of operational daring to pull data channels from an untested instrument only carried as a supplement. But the stakes were sky high, so everything rode on this mission-save software patch to heroically rescue the lander from doom. Anxious controllers now stood mere hours from the loss of signal as their window for descent swiftly closed. This was it, now or never. Either blaze forward with the duct-tape navigation plan and commit to risky terrain blind touchdown, or abort entirely and kiss the dream of historic private lunar landing goodbye. Stomachs churned with nausea as the Odysseus fired engines precisely on schedule. No backing out now. The autonomous spacecraft began executing its complex 11-minute landing sequence as white-knuckled engineers rode passive shotgun from afar through every phase, descending in proxy to the barren alien landscape. No comms or guidance possible. Mere passive witnesses praying feverishly that their last-minute software invention didn't seal the ship's doom. Then, dread silence on all channels as planned, when Odysseus slipped behind the lunar limbs. endless minutes of terrifying unknown passed without a peep. Until, finally, faint whispers of telemetry started flowing. It was alive. Against all odds, sensors indicated successful touchdown. Smiles broke anxious frowns as the first private moon landing was confirmed. But quick celebration soon gave way to further uncertainty. Given the Frankenstein sensor state and comms blackout, major questions remained. Had anything truly gone according to plan? What state was the Odysseus now in down there? Did they just sacrifice a probe for mere milestones? Time for answers trickled agonizingly slow. After first panic subsided, careful analyses of landed telemetry painted a clearer picture, confirming that the hasty navigation workaround, while preventing outright destruction, still caused serious landing chaos. Turns out, the substitute sensor didn't fully replace the missing precision lost without laser altimeters. So, Odysseus ultimately came flaming in way too hot and way too sideways. We're talking double the planned vertical velocity and major unexpected horizontal momentum, an unstable cocktail at touchdown. The result was earth-shaking. Literally. Higher speeds caused one metal leg to completely shatter on first impact, sending painful reverberations through the spacecraft. But that wasn't the end. The remaining momentum caused Odysseus to tip violently, then roll nearly 30 degrees onto its flank while still forcibly skidding along the surface. Sparks flew as the mangled probe careened to an unwilling halt, mere yards from sliding disastrously into a crater wall. Miraculously, internal sensors indicated critical components survived the lethal lurching and semi-controlled crash in the deformed resting angle. Beaten, battered, and somehow still functional. Talk about an extraordinarily wild and terrifying roller coaster touchdown sequence. A wonder anything operational emerged from that gnarly, abusive series of collisions with the unforgiving lunar terrain at all. Alright, after barely surviving that death-defying lunar crash landing, surely Odysseus's science mission was toast, right? Amazingly, not so fast. Early payload assessment shockingly revealed highly positive data returns, despite the less than ideal tipped-over resting angle. Turns out, the vast majority of instruments had already acquired at least partial readings during various key mission phases. We're talking launch acoustics, deep space radiation measurements, descent engine firings, and even surface operations upon initial touchdown, essentially meeting baseline science success criteria for demo missions like this. While teams obviously hoped for fuller dataset returns across all hardware given a smooth landing, this bounty already exponentially exceeded expectations, considering the traumatic off-kilter orientation. Perhaps landing catastrophically has bizarre advantages after all. The unintended positioning permits new vantage points and surface interface insights impossible in a standard vertical configuration. A silver lining for science. In the end, early payload yields had stunningly proven Odysseus may have face-planted magnificently, but it still remarkably managed to stick the all-important instrument-gathering objectives. An astonishing feat, deserving kudos, despite less photo-op-worthy existing camera angles. Let's just take a step back for a sec. The fact Odysseus even survived this ordeal at all, to phone home from the moon, is straight up incredible. After that hellacious crash site cartwheel, expectations plummeted like a botched Olympian dismount. And yet, mere hours later, faint but steady signals miraculously streamed from the mangled spacecraft against all odds, eliciting odd gasps in mission control. Not only alive, but already transmitting images and sensor feeds from the harsh lunar environment. An utterly unexpected twist, barely fathomable just earlier that soul. This astonishing resilience speaks volumes about both the physical robustness of the spacecraft's design and the unrelenting human commitment to salvage science from calamity by the intuitive machines team. Lesser organizations might have waved the white flag upon the loss of stable footing, declaring initial communication success the ceiling of achievement. But not this squad. Instead, they pressed on with the characteristic grit to activate and calibrate damaged equipment far outside factory test tolerances, just to squeeze particles of bonus data from Odysseus's weary, battered shell, going above and beyond in the highest scientific tradition despite disheartening odds. In the process, demonstrating incredible spacecraft engineering fortitude, along with inspiring manifestations of human space exploration virtues, tenacity, ingenuity, and perseverance in the face of adversity. Hats off. Now, let's be clear. This mission certainly didn't nail the not crashing violently part of the landing. Far from a graceful, balletic touchdown, Odysseus basically face-planted into the lunar regolith at high speed. Yet despite the polar opposite of textbook landing execution, there's no denying this audacious privately led moonshot still scored some enormously historic firsts. I mean, talk about breaking records. This commercial deep space endeavor finally marked the somewhat triumphant return of American spacecraft back to the lunar surface after a painfully long 50-year absence. Not even NASA has managed that since Apollo 17 rolled credits. And it represented a real coming-of-age moment for the fledgling private space industry as a whole. After decades of patient progress, they can now truly claim that first elusive feather in the cap, executing the world's pioneering commercial moon landing in history. There's no asterisks on those momentous achievements, so while public TV viewers surely hoped for more graceful slow-mo glory footage, no one can downplay the tremendous operational accomplishments and patriotic pride in claiming such massive milestones for U.S. spaceflight. But wait, there's more. Beyond the attention-grabbing milestones and records, this scrappy moon voyage also made big strides towards future lunar exploration goals. See, each phase of the improbable mission contributed valuable data now available to enhance forthcoming efforts. Detailed flight telemetry and crash analytics will undoubtedly improve subsequent lander designs for more reliable touchdowns. Hard-won surface instrumentation glimpses guide prudent placement and direction of upcoming science and ISRU demo gear now that previously unknown South Pole land hazards stand revealed. Frankenstein navigation mashups and Hour to Spare software patches stand testament to flexible private-public team ingenuity when backs press hard against walls, further nurturing productive partnerships. And simply attaining sustainable operations beyond the original U.S. comfort zone unlocks expansive new swaths of terrain for near-term robotic reconnaissance and long-term human expansion, aligning perfectly with broad Artemis settlement ambitions. Building upon peaks reached via Apollo mountains of past achievement, wily Odysseus planted critical guideposts, easing the route onwards and upwards for all who dare to follow in their occasionally errant but ever audacious tracks. So, when the history books look back, will Odysseus be judged an unqualified smash success? Well, given intuitive machines defined mission criteria of softly and safely landing collecting science, then no, not exactly textbook perfect. I mean, sure, there were enough frightening rolls, crashes, and flameouts to give even the steeliest controller serious heart palpitations, and the faceplant touchdown will keep CGI reenactment animators gainfully employed for decades. But if we broaden assessment scope to include overarching demo objectives, then heck yes, resoundingly mission accomplished. This scrappy probe heroically expanded the boundaries of conceivable, seizing initiative from the lion's jaw of defeat. Every moment when typical logic dictated failure as the only rational outcome. I mean, by all accounts, Odysseus really had no business surviving that comedy of air's descent whatsoever, let alone transmitting minutes afterwards, or maintaining partial functionality tilted 30 degrees on the ragged edge of a lunar crater. Yet, at every turn, we witnessed death-defying resilience and watchstanders clawing science from chaos. Together, perfectly encapsulating time-honored space exploration virtues of gallantry, snatching success from adversity against all odds. So, while the unversed public may envision Apollo-era acrobatic grace, I award this scrappy ship sky-high props for unleashing a torrent of technical firsts and fearlessly trailblazing towards our fantastic future amongst the stars. For that, I give Odysseus a hard-fought thumbs up. Alright, we've covered a ton of ground exploring this dramatic moonshot, from launch to crash to resurrection. But it all boils back down to that clickbait question plastered boldly across the thumbnail, doesn't it? Namely, failed the landing, but was the Odysseus lunar mission a success? Well, after that exhaustive framing, I toss the question to you space fans to decide. Did Scrappy Odie's contributions outweigh the disastrous dismount? Feel free to passionately debate either way in the comments section. But before signing off, please show some meteoric YouTube love by annihilating that like button, subscribing for more weekly space stories, and ringing the bell to join our notification squad. It seriously helps this channel survive the YouTube algorithm asteroid belts. Plus, you won't miss the wild rides covering the next Intuitive Machines moon voyage, slated to hop test mini landers later this year. Madness. I love it. Well, that's everything, Spacers. Thanks so much for watching this epic recap of the history-making, yet madcap, Odysseus moon mission. Let the success, or failure arguments, rage on. This is the Space Technician, signing off for now, and I'll see you Space Cowboys in the next one.